Let's move on to the NBA because there was some scary shit that happened over the last couple of days.
Do you want to start? You want to start?
Why don't you start, Bobby?
So Jason Tatum had probably the scariest injury we've seen in quite a while. Um, I was terrified in the moment when it happened just because of his reaction. It wasn't. It wasn't. It didn't look bad at the time, but his reaction to it scared the shit out of me. Turns out it's just a sprained ankle, which is good news, I guess. It's not great news because there's only 10 games to go in the season. What do you think they do with this from here on out? Do they rest him for the rest of the season and let him rest up for the playoffs? Do you want them to test the ankle? What do you think?
I think the hard part about this is that, listen, if we were 10 games back of first with 10 games to play, I'd say just, you know what? Just rest them. But with Cleveland being 500, like 6-4 in their last 10 games.
Yeah,
The
they've lost what,
Celtics
four in
being
a row?
9-1 in their last 10 games.
Yeah.
Oh, they did, but now they've won 2 in a row. So the Celtics are only 5 games back of that number 1 seed. Now, I, I think you got to kind of go for it, don't you? Now, but I also think that you can do that without Jason Tatum playing 35 minutes a night. If there's a way for you to get in there and run up the score in the first half, which they love to do, with him only playing like 23 minutes, do that. But I do think, like, if the doctors say, listen, the best way for this to heal, for him to have, the easiest comeback is to rest, then do that. But if it's one of those things that it's going to be a lingering issue with nagging pain, and he's going to have to get used to playing with that through the postseason, why not just reduce his minutes? But I still say you go for the number 1 seed.
I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it. I feel like the Celtics are just better than the Cavs, and they don't necessarily need that number 1 seed. With how Tatum plays, I feel like his explosiveness and his pop is so important. And if that ankle isn't 100%, we're in a lot of trouble. And I don't know how much you necessarily need him down the stretch, too, with the way that the rest of the team is playing. I feel like if there's any time that we can give him a little bit of rest, it's right now because of how everyone else is playing. I mean, Pritchard is playing out of this world right now. He had 25 the other night.
Yep.
I just feel like this is the time, if any, that you can give him some rest. And I'm not that worried about Cleveland. Let me rephrase that. I'm not that worried about Cleveland if Porzingis is back. If we have a healthy Porzingis and he can match up with Mobley, I'm not worried about Cleveland that much. So I feel like we can beat them even without home field or home court. But it really depends.
I mean, you have to respect the 58 wins in 72 games. Like they're not nothing. They saw what happened to them against us. Yeah, they were down. They were down a couple players in last postseason, but they saw what we were doing, and they went out and they added people to counter us. And a team that's 30-5 at home. Yes, we're 29-7 on the road. Sure, and I trust the Celtics to win on the road. I mean, they did it even in 2022. They stole a game in Golden State. So like this team, I don't think, much to I would say the detriment of some home games sometime, they don't really care what the game is. But there's just so much. I think it matters more. Obviously, yes, to win a championship, sure. But if you're in a position to win the number 1 seed, I think you do it. I mean, I was listening to Mad Dog Russo today. I fucking love that man. He's a national treasure. Protect him at all costs. He was talking. He was like blowing and popping blood vessels in his face because he was screaming about the fact that Denver was resting Murray, they're resting the Joker, and he said, "Listen, on the 80th game of the season in 1986, the Celtics were playing the Nets, and all 5 starters played 34 minutes that game. If you're the best team, which I do think, yes, the Celtics are, they go out there and try and earn it every single night. I think you have to do that. It might be stupid. I might be told you're just being dumb, but in reality, I think the Celtics are good enough to manage Jason Tatum's minutes as long as the bench, like a Payton Pritchard, still show out, I think you can, in these next 10 games, you can still go 8-2. And now you're, what, 61 and 21? That's a hell of a bounce back.
It is. And it's just, I don't see them catching the Cavs. It's 5 games with 10 to go. That's tough. And it's just not worth it to me to get that ankle going. And who would we play in the first round right now? Let's see. The Hawks. So I mean, even then, we wouldn't even have to exert them too much then. That ankle injury it's so important. We saw what happened with Tatum's ankle against the Heat back in, what was that, 23, where we lost because he injured his ankle. We
It's a good point.
Jason Tatum is so important to this team right now.
Well, we don't. By the way, we don't know that it would be the Hawks because 7, 8, 9, and 10. That's the plan.
That's true.
So anything could fucking happen. Anything could happen. Now I don't fear the Heat anymore, so that's good. But like, the Magic have had our number over the last couple of years. I think we should obviously handle them, but in reality, like, listen, I just think if you last year you were from start to finish the best team in the league, everybody knew it. If somehow, even with Cleveland ripping off, what was it? Is it 2 winning streaks of 16 games or more?
Yep, 2.
If you can still somehow finish number 1 seed, like, you just proved that they did all of that, and you're still better. You're still better.
I think we're better anyways, but
I know you do. You've completely dismissed Cleveland, just like Rayshawn does.
I don't dismiss them.
By the way, this reminds me about how you talked about the Miami Heat in 2020 in the bubble. By the way, it very much reminds me of that.
I don't dismiss them. It's just I have such a high opinion of the Celtics team now, and I've seen them succeed against Cleveland, and I've seen that was the thing back in 2020 is we hadn't seen it yet, and that was the thing where, like, even with all my positive optimism, like, you know, we still hadn't seen it, but now it's been proven that these guys can do this at the highest level. So they
have championship DNA now.
They have real championship DNA, correct? So I just feel like when it comes down to it, in a game 7, it doesn't matter if we're home or away because Jason Tatum is going to show up and Jaylen Brown is going to show up and, you know, Payton Pritchard's even going to show up. Even a guy like Sam Hauser is going to show up and give us some minutes off the bench. So, like, I just feel like this team is just different this year, and I don't know if it matters. I really don't.